This is the Film Geeks podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Film Geeks podcast powered by Indian Nerve. This is Abhishek, and joining me as always are Arindam and Anir. We have a great show lined up for all of you, but before we get on with the readings and dealings of today, how are you guys doing? How was your week?
My week was good. Surprisingly, I completed 4 years of work and the company sent me a mail. So I don't know if I should be happy or I should be sad. But I don't know, it's working out quite fine. And in case someone is listening, this is not our day job. We just do this over the weekend. So, what about you, Anir?
That's very funny that you spoke about completing a number of years because I'm completing my 7th year this April. That's it's at that point of time where I don't recognize most of the people in the organization because the ones that were there when I joined have already left. I joined as a junior member and now I am an older member. I can't say senior because I'm not, but I'm an older member in the organization. Things are good. Things have been good. I haven't been able to catch too much. I'm still having internet issues in my area. But so I'm actually doing this from a different place where there's internet connectivity.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that you can't recognize, people who are new joinees, right? In my organization, I work on the first floor. Then the second floor is taken by another office, and the third floor is again our office. So I normally don't go to the third floor, but whenever I go, I just see new faces, so I don't know what the fuck is going on. It's almost like I am at a different organization. It probably has to do because people just, like you said, people just come in and get their whatever experience for a couple of years and then they move out. But for me, it's a little strange because I don't recognize anyone. I just have a close set of like four or five people that I speak with, like my friends and all. But apart from that, I hardly know anyone in the organization anymore. So every day it's like walking into a new place, which is kind of daunting and kind of cool at the same time. But that being said, have you guys?
I have a completely, different view of why I don't recognize people because everyone looks the same. Did you realize everyone has a beard and has a World War I German hairstyle? That's the reason why, I don't know, most guys look the same to me. I'm pretty sure that it must be the same case in your, offices and everywhere that you look. It's kind of a trend.
Yeah, but I hope that some of the higher ups are not listening to this. But I think a little bit of a problem with my office is people tend to be a little bit more uptight, for the lack of a better word. So everyone is in formals and all of that. Yeah, I understand what you're saying about the hair and the way they look and all of that. Yeah, but I wouldn't be the one to like judge them and all because I had the same look which you're talking about like last year. I had it last year, so I was way ahead of the curve. Right now, everyone has it. Now I've just shaved myself bald. I try to give myself a mohawk, which grew back, and I don't have the patience to go and do it again. But yeah, I know what you mean. Everyone kind of looks the same, but I don't know. It's a very
glitch in the matrix.
Subject.
I live in North Delhi, man, and when you live in North Delhi, everybody does look the same.
Everyone has the same car, man. I mean, I remember in Delhi, everyone had a Duster. Every guy had the same car. Every guy wore the same clothes. Every guy had the same phone. So Delhi is like, I don't know, it's like some bloody clone factory or something like that. Every guy looks more or less the same. And they talk in the same way as well. So yeah, it's a little weird in Delhi. Is it the same scene in Bombay as well?
No way. Other than the fact that, there's that copy paste repeat with the hipster beard and the hair. Other than that, it's pretty unique. And there's like, like in Bangalore, I noticed there was a huge thing that you need to be dressed a certain way to get, Bombay's not like that. It's completely chill.
Yeah, but I think South Bombay is still, everyone like, it has to be like that, right?
No.
South Bombay is.
Yeah, they are like super rich, but they don't give a fuck. I didn't see anything like that. You tend to get that like if you're going around in Bangalore, maybe Brigade or something, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that type. But that doesn't really matter.
Those things are only in Delhi, man. I mean, you can see the wannabe crowd. Abhishek, you're here, so you're well aware of that crowd that is there. It's so irritating, massively irritating. The same set of clothes, the same set of phones, the same set of hairstyles. Everybody is the same, man. It just, it's no joke that you can't actually differentiate between those people.
It's either that or it's that we are going a little old. Because speaking of things which are the same and things which the younger people can relate to, I don't think I can understand most of the music which comes out nowadays. So I can't relate to any of the even heavy metal. Some of the new bands, they're way too out there for me. I always go back to some of the early 80s and some of the 90s or even the early 2000s bands, but I can't really get into the new bands. So I guess this is just a sign of the times, and I understand now what people from older generations like our parents or even people older than that can actually went through, and we are in the late 20s, early 30s, and even now we can not connect with the people who are just after us, and it's just going to get worse from here. So holy shit, I sound like an old guy.
Winter is coming.
And speaking about things which have come last week, excuse the horrible pun, the South by Southwest Festival just ended. And just for the listeners out there, it started off as a music festival in 1987 and has quickly expanded from there, and it's now a must-stop for studios and networks. It's basically Comic-Con for indie films. In recent years, hits like Furious 7's, Sausage Party, Trainwreck, Spy, and Neighbors have all come to Texas, where the South by Southwest Festival happens, before dominating theaters across the world. And there were quite a number of films and quite a number of TV shows which had a little bit of a run or a panel at South by Southwest. We'll talk about a few films which we are really excited for, and let's start by talking about Song to Song, which actually is a major coup that speaks about South by Southwest's growing influence. It's Terrence Malick's latest film, the reclusive director who typically launches his indies in European film festivals like the Venice Film Festival or the Berlin or the Cannes. He came to Austin for the opening night premiere. Felt really good to see that such a huge director has given credence to this indie fair, and I think it speaks volumes because the entire cast was there, and the cast comprises of Natalie Portman, Michael Fassbender, and Ryan Gosling, who's just on a tear right now. So I think this is one movie which I'm really looking forward to. Have you guys heard or seen anything about Song to Song?
I've seen the set pics, etc., and some of the promo pics which came out. And Ryan Gosling seems to be killing it, playing struggling actors and musicians. So he's playing a struggling musician here as well. And Terrence Malick is sort of a hit and miss for me. I really like some of his stuff, but some of his stuff really goes over my head, like Knight of Cups. I couldn't really get into that movie. Sometimes it's too esoteric, I feel. But this one looks to be more of a mainstream affair. So I guess I'll quite like it, and it has my boy Michael Fassbender in it as well. So I think I'm going to quite like it. Also, I think he debuted this in SXSW because it is based in Texas. It should be a good movie. Let's see.
Some of Terrence Malick's movies are really out there for me, and it's one of the things I have a hard time connecting to, personally, because I can never understand which direction he wants to take with his movies. Tinderline being one of the examples that I'd like to give. Like at the third half of the movie, and you get really confused about where the movie is generally going, and the Tree of Life is also another example. Like, it's a beautiful movie. There is no one who can debate any of that, but what direction it wants to take, it's so hard to comprehend sometimes that I personally have a very hard time connecting with his work. I'm one who is never really excited for his work in the way that I'm sort of excited for maybe Scorsese movie. So I'll say that his movies are beautiful, but sometimes they lack the kind of pull that I guess I would like for him to have.
Terrence Malick, one theme which he deals with beautifully is existentialism. We were speaking about this among ourselves a few months back, especially after Rogue One. One of my dream movies which I want to watch is an Obi-Wan Kenobi anthology film directed by Terrence Malick, because no one captures existentialism better than he does. But this movie is also interesting because it has been shot on location, in the sense they have actually gone into concerts and recorded the scenes there. Like you don't have a fake band or whatever playing in the film. You have real bands. So this is something which intrigues me. I just want to see how they have gone and treated the entire matter, and that should be something which if that's the only thing, that's the only reason why I would be watching this film.
So that means that Terrence Malick basically ripped off Rock On, right? Because Rock On was shooting in 7 weeks.
Yeah, probably that, yes. And speaking of things which I am really excited for, I'm a huge fan of Tommy Wiseau and his movie The Room. So what can be better than the worst best film ever made is a movie based on the worst best film ever made. There's a movie called Disaster Artist, and I've been waiting on this film for the past 2 years, I think. And this is directed by James Franco. And as everyone knows that James Franco can be a little pretentious, can be a little bit of an asshole, but with this film, he has hit it out of the park. It's just an ideal vehicle for all his pet obsessions, and it details the creation of Tommy Wiseau's classic, The Room. The pre-premiere buzz is that it could be one of SXSW's best discoveries, and there are genuine talks of an Oscar buzz this early for this film. This looks like an amazing film, and this also stars James Franco and his frequent collaborators like Seth Rogen. It also stars Dave Franco. It also stars Tommy Wiseau, who made an appearance in the premiere of this film. So what do you guys think about Disaster Artist?
It's a very interesting thing to look at the room itself. If you guys haven't heard this movie, you should, because it's one of those movies that you just can't keep your look away from. It's like that accident on the road, right? You shouldn't be looking at it, but you just can't take your eyes off it. And Wiseau's acting is legendary, to say the least. And
I watched it like 6 times, dude. I am such a huge fan of The Room. It was introduced to me by Kishaloi, who is a part of this podcast. He introduced me to The Room in the year 2004 or something like that, when the movie actually came out, and he came back from from Delhi, and he said, like, dude, you need to watch this film. I didn't watch it back then. And then I watched it a year after that, after he gave it to me, and I was completely blown away. I ensure that I at least watch the film once a year. It's an amazing work of art. I can't even put it in words. It's brilliant.
Wiseau's acting in this movie is, I don't know, I don't have any word except for brilliant, man. And if he's there in the movie, I really want to know his reaction to the Disaster Artist. I know he was there in the screenings at SXSW, but I really want to see, because you'll have moments where the audience is laughing at James Franco and his portrayal of Wiseau. So I'm really interested to know what was Wiseau's reaction to all this, because I'm sure he took this movie very seriously. Unfortunately, it hasn't panned out like that. His reaction to it is something that I'd like to know, because it would give us a glimpse of how seriously he takes this movie at the moment.
What I heard from about the movie is that, like Ed Wood, they don't make fun of it, but they pay actual reverence and homage to why, it connects with the audience. For me personally, I've tried watching The Room, and like Gunda, everybody brags that they've watched the Gunda, but what they do is they just watch the part. I have tried watching both the movies, and it's very hard to do so. So I'm one of those who, unlike others who'd say that, watch Gunda, watch Thing. If you actually start watching them, you can't get through these movies. It's impossible. So I'm happy with just seeing those few scenes with like, hi, and you're tearing me apart and all that spoon shit that goes on. But I actually think, like Ed Wood, it will show us what actually went on behind the scene, and it won't make fun of Wiseau. It won't be an outright parody of it. And that is the reason why I think it is getting such a great critical response. Hopefully, I really, really think James Franco, if he gets a nod, or actually if he manages to win the Best Actor award, I hope he brings Tommy Wiseau to the stage so we can get some epic moments out of that. Like, if you remember, 20 Feet from Stardom won the Best Oscar Documentary, and the lady who made the movie brought out Darlene Love, one of the subjects for the movie, to come out, and she sang, and Bill Murray gave a standing ovation. So I hope something like that happens.
I'm not so sure that it will be nominated for the Oscars because recency effect and all that, It's too early in the year, and I'm sure that people will start forgetting it. And all of this also depends on how much they're willing to spend on the promoting the movie during the Oscar season, which I think is kind of late, because James Franco, I don't know, he might be involved in some other project that he might be interested in promoting at that point of time. It's interesting to know that he has also produced it and directed. Dave Franco is also there in this movie as Greg Sestero, and it's an iconic movie. I think if it does win him an Oscar nomination, I think, I haven't watched it yet, but let's see whether he does deserve it. Or because festivals aside, sometimes they do get hyped up. Like Silence, if you remember, Silence got a standing ovation, and I heard it was a long standing ovation, which didn't really translate to either box office success or critical success for that movie. So let's wait and see whether this movie actually holds the same kind. It's important to remember that this was not the final cut of the movie.
I think the biggest difference between these bad movies, like Arindam said, he drew a comparison between Gunda and The Room. I think the biggest difference is The Room actually takes itself as a very, very serious film. If you hear Tommy Wiseau talk about the film, you would see that he actually loves this film and he completely gets what he's doing. But the problem with Gunda is it's just another film made, but I don't think Kandesha actually gives a fuck about Gunda because he has made 50 movies which are exactly, if not as bad as Gunda. But with The Room, I think Tommy Wiseau, this was his labor of love because he actually spent 8 years, apparently, that's what he says, writing the book. So it's based on a novel which Tommy Wiseau wrote himself. And I highly recommend that you guys go and check out The Room. This is it's an amazing film and it's definitely worth your time. So go and check that out. And the last movie which we will be talking about as we round up our SXSW coverage is Baby Driver, which is written and directed by Edgar Wright, and it stars Ansel Elgort, Kevin Spacey, Lily James, John Bernthal, Aiza Gonzalez, John Hamm, and Jamie Foxx. And it follows a young getaway driver who is forced to work for a crime boss, and the trailer dropped sometime last week. And this film was one of the top winners, beating out movies such as James Franco's Disaster Artist, as we spoke about, and Atomic Blonde for the Headliner Award.
It has an amazing cast. I can't believe we are finally seeing Mad Men's John Hamm in an Edgar Wright movie. It has Jamie Foxx as well, and I really loved the trailer. And the reviews said that every scene, it's a music video in itself. So his use of music is pretty well known. Shaun of the Dead has one of the best Queen music sequences ever used. So I just can't wait for it. And he quit making Ant-Man for this, so it should be worthwhile.
Edgar Wright movies, something that don't disappoint you. His last movies was a little bit too serious for my liking. If you've seen his work, then you know that most of his movies, they're like very fun movies. His last movie was a fun movie, but it wasn't a fun movie in the sense that it took itself a little too seriously for my liking. It was a little bit more mature than what I have come to expect of him. Not to say that it was a bad movie. What I'm saying is that it was a bit different. So with this movie, I think he has returned to what he's good at making, and which is really, really fun movies. And each of these scenes is in his work. It's always brilliant the way he edits his movies. So I'm very looking forward to watching this movie. The trailers have blown me out. I've made people watch this trailer, and I'm really genuinely excited for this movie.
Yeah, even I'm really excited for Baby Driver, especially because of the soundtrack. I'm not really sure how Edgar Wright's filmmaking sentiments would be translated into an American setting, because all I watch from Edgar Wright is a very British sensibility of making films. So I'm not really sure, because it didn't really work out with one of my favorite directors. When he moved across the sea and started making more American type of films, it didn't really work out for him. And I'm talking about Guy Ritchie. It didn't really work out for Guy Ritchie, and I hope that Edgar Wright proves me wrong. I'm excited for this film. I really have really high hopes from this film, because at the end of the day, it's an Edgar Wright film. I hope it really does well. I'm really waiting to be blown away. And speaking about things that have blown me away in the past, are movies such as Evil Dead. And this week marks the 30-year anniversary of Evil Dead 2, which in fact is my favorite horror film of all time. It is still the funniest horror movie ever made, as one of the greatest sequels, not just a horror sequel, but one of the greatest sequels ever. And it made far more money than the first Evil Dead movie, and is far more influential than the first Evil Dead movie. And it also launched the careers of one of my favorite directors, Sam Raimi, and one of my favorite actors, Bruce Campbell. And it has influenced countless, even till this day. Evil Dead has influenced everything that you watched and everything that you're gonna watch, because this movie is, if you ask me, it's as influential as The Godfather. It is, especially in the genre of horror, it is one of the best movies. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. If you haven't watched Evil Dead 2, you guys definitely should go and check it out and come back and listen to this podcast, because you may think that it doesn't hold up and it's funny and all of that, but just look at the effects, look at the storytelling, look at everything which that movie tries to portray, and this is something which has influenced everyone since. Then this part of the podcast, we'll be talking about Evil Dead, and we're talking about the genre of horror, a genre which the three of us love. Let's get on with it then. Let's talk about Evil Dead.
Evil Dead was one of the first movies that I think we ever watched. First horror movies. I remember us hiring the VHS tape for it. Just by the cover itself, it had a half-skulled man and that amazing iconic font of Evil Dead Part 2. And I was surprised that, to find out later on in my life that Evil Dead 2 was an exact, he basically remade the same movie with Evil Dead 2. And now that when I watched Evil Dead 1, it just wasn't that good compared to Evil Dead 2, of course, Dead by Dawn. It had those amazing sequences in the woods and, of course, the chainsaw scene and everything. And like everything that you see in that movie has been replicated in some way or the other by someone making a Cabin in the Woods movie. A Cabin in the Woods being an operative word that we'll come to later, of course. But it's one of those iconic movies that you always can go and watch anytime. Right now, if we watch, of course, we'll see the comedy aspect of it more. But when I watched it, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old at that time. And I remember it being a terrifying, terrifying watch.
It was a scary movie, wasn't it? Point that I always think about when I watch Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 is how Sam Raimi was probably way ahead of his time in the way he used prosthetics and other props to sort of further the narrative. I don't think anybody had done that before, and the way he did it made the movies, at least when we were young, terrifying to say the least. And do you guys remember that there used to be this rumor, I don't know if it was true or not, because all those have always been unsubstantiated, but the one where there was a reward where if you could watch the movie alone in a theater and you would get
That was
some...
Exorcist. Yeah, because that happened in Shillong, I
That
guess.
actually happened in Shillong.
The owner for the hall who was there, so he used to, he had an open challenge, so whoever could watch would get some amount of money or something like that.
Yeah, but there's always that urban legend, right, which always transcends
Someone died.
everything. And yes, someone died. And it's there for this movie as well. But I know it was there for Exorcist, but I'm saying that I've heard this one for Evil Dead, the first part, not the one that we're speaking of, but the Evil Dead movie itself. I'm not sure whether it's true or not. Again, as I said, it's always something that has become like an urban legend. I'm sure this story, will float around for a lot of the horror movies that we're going to talk about. But I definitely have heard this one for Evil Dead.
It's funny that you mentioned the theater scene because one of my worst nightmares is spawns from one of these movies that I saw. And surprisingly, it's a Hindi horror movie called Raat, and it's by RGV. And it had a sequence in which Revati, the actress, she's watching some movie with her boyfriend, and then she turns around and she finds the entire theater is empty. So that has stuck around for a long, long time, and it's one of my worst nightmares to find yourself in situations like that. Since we're talking about horror movies, there are very rare Hindi horror movies which are really good and really scary. Raat is one of the pioneers in that genre, and it's as good as any movie that you'll see out there.
If you think about Hindi movies, it's very hard to find good ones. I seriously can't remember anything other than Raat. And when people ask me, what are the good Indian horror movies that you have watched so far, I can only think of Raat. So, as he also made Bhoot, which was kind of his second movie that was kind of okay. It's also by Ram Gopal Verma, if you guys didn't know that. Mrigank was a big fan, man. He really wanted to watch that Sholay remake, Aag. And that's a horror of a different kind, right? Going to watch that horror of a different kind. I'm glad that I didn't go.
Half the movie cinematography is following that actress's ass, right? And RGP, I remember two of his other movies which came out. One was Con, in which Manoj Vajpayee, he played the role of a salesman. That is I believe that is a genuinely good horror movie. And another one was an anthology horror movie called Darna Mana Hai. Pretty sure you remember that. Part 1 was genuinely scary. I really liked almost every segment that was made. It had a good mix of actual horror stories like the ones that you hear when horror stories are being discussed, like the one in which had Nana Patekar and Vivek Oberoi, I guess, in which one of the ghosts has a missing eye. And the other one were funny but were horrific in itself, were something like the Twilight Zone stories, like the one in which he can stop time.
Speaking of influences, I don't think any other lead character is as influential as Ash.
That's true. I mean, so much so that he has got his own TV series now, which is freaking awesome, if you ask me. This is one TV series that just came out of the blue for me because I had done no research on it and I didn't know it was coming out. So it was really good to see that they actually invested in making something that great. Uh, and it is a very iconic character. I mean, and you guys are going to laugh at me because when I was young, I always used to confuse Bruce Campbell with Matt Dillon. Yeah, for a long time, I actually believed that Matt Dillon was there in Evil Dead. I was young, and you never look at the title credits to see who the actor actually is, but you just know that this was the guy in that movie, that other movie, and that's how you connect the dots. It's only when I grew older that I realized that this is the guy. I mean, this is not Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon doesn't have the same kind of comedic timing, I guess, that Bruce Campbell has. He does have a little bit of comedic timing, as we have seen in There's Something About Mary, but not that great as Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell is just amazing. I think he's one of the most underrated actors out there. And if you have seen Burn Notice, he is amazing in that TV series.
He's one of the few horror icons who is the hero of the movie, because generally we associate them with the horror, like, iconic figures with being the villains, like, Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. And I don't think there are any other than Ripley from Alien, but that's also delves into more of an action franchise rather than strictly a horror one. So I think he's the only one, right?
I think Michael Myers' sister had a major part to play, especially in the Rob Zombie remake. So apart from him, I think she is a very, very, very distant second when it comes to, another iconic character. And I think it's a much recent film, but I'm not really sure if you guys have watched it. And I know Arindam has watched it, and I'm a very, very, very big fan of this film. I think this guy, if this franchise actually takes on, and Michael Dougherty has been doing a lot of great work over the past few years, I think another character which can take off is Sam, the character from Trick or Treat, the kid with the burlap sack. I think he is also another horror character which can take off if Michael Dougherty comes back with Trick or Treat 2, because Trick or Treat is one of the best horror films that you guys can watch. It's a little different from other films, because Trick or Treat is a horror anthology film centered around 4 stories occurring on Halloween. Each story features a mysterious trick-or-treater named Sam, like I said, who wears a burlap sack over his head and appears wherever someone breaks a Halloween tradition. This film is exceptionally crafted, love letter to all the horror films of all kinds. Hardened horror film fans, they will see these tropes which are being used in every story. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant film, and it features werewolves, undead children, serial killers, and anything that anyone would want out of such an anthology. Many horror films occur on and around Halloween, but somehow Trick or Treat feels more festive than the rest. It's almost like a Christmas film set in Halloween. It's a brilliant watch. You highly owe it to yourself to go and watch it. Directed by Michael Dougherty, released in 2007. Trick or Treat is a brilliant watch.
Thank you for reminding me of this movie, by the way, Abhishek, because I had completely forgotten about it. I'm not sure whether you can come up with a sequel to this movie, because it's a one-trick pony thing. You stop being surprised at the end of the first movie itself, because you know that Sam is a character who's there to sort of not right any wrongs per se, but to punish any transgivings. So your second movie might have more characters, more supernatural elements to it, more creatures to it, but at the same time, it's going to follow the same plot line where you know that Sam is going to be the one who punishes you for being a rule breaker. So I don't know where they will take it there from it. If they can find a very creative way to work around that problem, I mean, it becomes a very interesting watch, to say the least. But otherwise, it just becomes a repetitive.
I think it makes more sense as a TV series, like maybe 8 episodes, and what M. Night Shyamalan is doing with Tales from the Crypt. I guess it's better suited, at least for our sensibilities today, to have a TV show out of it. That would make sense. Also, coming to anthologies, I guess ABCs of Death and VHS were some of the newer anthology movies that I really, really enjoyed. ABCs of Death features like short movies by 26 directors, and each movie follows a certain letter, like from A to Z, obviously. And VHS is also about some people. They break into this house and they find these VHS tapes, and they keep playing them. And each VHS tape is a separate horror movie in itself. So I really enjoyed those.
Yeah, there have been a slew of movies like that. The lost and found tapes. I think in this sense, you have to talk about Blair Witch Project. There's no better movie out there than Blair Witch Project when it comes to introducing people to that whole genre of lost and found tapes. And in that sense, this movie was such a good build-up. And although it looked like a very, very, very low budget movie. If you look at it, there were very few characters. I think three characters they were there, and it had a very shitty camera that they were probably using to reinforce the fact that they were using handheld camera, portable camera. The ending itself is so good that I genuinely got scared when I watched it. And I can't say that for too many of the movies right now, because horror movies now, they have fallen into this very predictable pattern where there are only a few movies a year that will genuinely excite you because they are different than the rest. Where other movies have become really like a copy of other movies that have already been made. So it becomes very boring, to say the least. So in that case, in that sense, when movies like Blair Witch Project comes out, it's very important to sort of understand why they are so important, because these movies are genre-defining movies in a genre that has already been very much saturated.
I guess it's a prime example of less is more, because that was the pioneer of the genre. I think it was one of the first cinema verite movies which came out. And similarly, last year or last to last year, I guess, we had the movie It Follows. So it had minimal plotline. They did not give us explanation. It was like straight up scary stuff which was happening. And similarly, this year there's another movie coming called It Comes at Night, I guess. They did not tell us anything what's going on in the movie, and it genuinely looks very, very intriguing. I guess less is more is one of the more, I think directors should be focusing on that more rather than the outlandish stuff like paranormal activities. Otherwise, you go to the extreme route and do something like what Ash versus Evil Dead is doing. Like, give us maximum gore, give us maximum, like, silliness which comes along. Just accept it as it is.
As much as I love the gore, as much as I love the violence, I think my favorite form of horror is the psychological bit of it, which brings me to one of my favorite movies of the past 10 years. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And there's a movie called The House of the Devil. I mean, it's a labor of love by one of my favorite directors called T. West, who wrote, directed, and edited this movie. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 86%. And on IMDb, it's at 6.4. The thing about T. West, or Ty West, he's that he's an admirer of classic horror films, and he understands that if there's anything scarier than a haunted house, it's a house which may be possibly haunted. And that is the entire point of watching a horror film, that you really don't know what's going on, what's behind the door, what's beyond the veil. That is the entire point of watching a slow burn horror film. And especially this film, House of the Devil, it provides an introduction to a few audience members like myself to the Hitchcockian definition of suspense. It's the anticipation and not the happening, and that is the fun. And the anticipation that something evil might happen, the anticipation that something bad might go down at any moment, at something which is so banal like a girl ordering a pizza, and you are waiting for shit to hit the fan. That is what makes this genre so much fun. And no one captures this better, no one understands this better than T. West. And I think he is one of the better directors in Hollywood right now, and him, Adam Wingard, and James Wan are three of the biggest horror experts that Hollywood has. What did you guys think about House of the Devil?
House of the Devil was amazing, but I like his follow-up better. Ty West made another movie called The Innkeepers about a haunted hotel, and that takes all the like, the common tropes of horror, like a piano getting played suddenly or something like that, and he puts entirely new twists to it. So I really like the genres that he works in. He recently made a western as well, which is John Wick set in the West, called In the Valley of Violence. So I really like his work. And speaking about Adam Wingard, I've loved everything that he's done. I'm yet to watch the Blair Witch, because mainly because I am yet to watch Blair Witch Project. I don't know why. I just haven't watched it till now. Maybe that also can
What
be,
the fuck is the matter with you?
yeah, that also can be attributed to the fact that a scary movie has ruined that movie for me forever. Remember that scene in which the stuff dribbles out from the nose? So that was an iconic horror scene.
Yeah.
So I saw that first. So it got ruined for me forever. I'm excited for Adam Wingard's take on Death Note, because he's making that for Netflix. Even the Japanese live action, remake wasn't that good. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that, because that is also one form of horror that is really, really amazing.
That anime itself wasn't that great towards the end of it. If you remember Death
Yeah,
Note, the starting was amazing. The
correct.
ending is shit, man. The live action movies, I didn't expect too much of them anyway. But coming back to this, I think the Tywist makes really awesome movies, and the interesting thing that you're talking about, Abhishek, was how your suspense is so important in movies, horror movies. It's because now you know when you're kids, you really understand horror as a kid. As adults, you tend to dilute down the definition of of what it means to for a movie to scare you, is because you're already expecting a lot of those things. You know that there is going to be something out there, and when you're expecting something to be there, you're not going to be scared as much. So you have to be there. A movie has to surprise you, and the best way for it to do that is to build it up in buttloads, as some directors they are doing right now at the moment. A lot of these directors they stick with the making movies that they think will do well in the box office. That's not what a horror movie is about. Horror movies was never about box office. Horror movie is about moving the masses and scaring them. And if it's genuinely scary enough, the masses will go and watch it. It's one of those movies that if it is a good one, you don't want to watch it alone.
There's also another thing. It's that I think we have been spoiled by movies that we've seen which have not come out of Hollywood. Because I remember one of the first introduction to Abhishek had bought this very weird Japanese, I remember in Shillong they used to sell these 30 in one DVDs. So there would be 30 horror movies in one DVD itself, and out of those you could play 10, and out of those 5 would be good. So I remember seeing this movie called Tale of Two Sisters in it. And believe me, to this day, it is the most scary movie that I have seen till now. They show the ghost for like maybe 10 minutes max out of the entire movie. But like you said, the anticipation is what creates great horror. And Tale of Two Sisters was certainly one of those movies, which is an amazing Japanese movie, and it is scary as shit. I don't think The Ring or movies like Shutter and all, when you talk to people about Asian horror, they refer to these two movies, but they do not stand a chance near this movie. And I did my engineering, so like most of the engineering students, I also did my film appreciation. I did not spend it in class. I used to bunk and watch, shows and movies. I really came to appreciate the Asian genre and the European genre of horror movies. And among them, some of them were, there's a Thai movie called Coming Soon. So if there's someone who's looking for a good horror movie, this is my go-to movie. I just tell them, go watch Coming Soon. It is extremely rare to find. You can stream it somewhere probably. So make sure that you watch that. Also, there's a director who's one of my favorite directors of all time. His name is Takashi Miike. So what he does is he makes children's movies, okay? So he makes like 3 to 4 children's movies, and with that, the money that he gets, he makes his passion project. And those passion projects may be samurai movies, what he's recently doing now. But in the late 80s and the 90s, he was making some of the sickest movies that have ever come out. One of them is Audition, and the second one is Ichi the Killer. Ichi the Killer is, I think, when it comes to body horror, it is a sickening movie. You can probably find it on YouTube. There is one, the oil burning scene. and there's the other scene in which Ichi is a vigilante, say sort of. He gets turned on when he sees violence on women. So you know what kind of sick shit you're getting into. So that is one of the most disgusting movies that I've ever seen, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you're a fan of body horror.
If you have seen the movie, then you should go watch the manga, because if the movie is say at 100, then the manga itself is at 200. It's way sicker, way gorier, way more visceral than you expect it to be. I mean, there's scenes where the final scene, right? It just is in the movie itself. They have toned it down, and if you've seen the movie, you understand that that's an understatement. Manga itself is so gory that it's a surprise that they managed to tone it down the way and still make it so gory and hard hitting at the same time. But when it comes to Japanese movies, I think we have to remember the two directors that apart from Takashi Miike, obviously, because one of them is Takashi Shimizu, who has made The Grudge, and there's Hideo Nakata, who we always remember for The Ring. Now, these are the Japanese versions of the movies. So obviously, there's a whole class section of people who will really say that maybe the Hollywood adaptations were better. But I believe that the Japanese versions are better because Japanese sensibilities are a bit different. They tend to favor your suspense and the whole thriller part. So I prefer the Japanese movies to the Hollywood adaptations. And I feel like these two directors are the standout directors for me when it comes to Japanese horror movies.
You know, there was one movie known as, which came out called Three Extremes. It's an anthology movie again, and there are three directors attached. The first is by a guy called Park Chan-wook, who directed this little movie called Old Boy, and he's one of the greatest working directors today. That was the last movie, I think. The first movie was directed by Takashi Miike. And surprisingly, out of the three short movies which were in that movie, the best movie was by a guy called Fruit Chan. I never heard of this guy. He's a director from Hong Kong. So basically, the story revolved around there was this lady who did these very raw abortions. And what she did with the fetus was she made momos out of the unborn kid. And she used to feed it to people who wanted to get pregnant. And it's one sick movie. And if you are into stuff like, you're not into stuff like that, but if you're a fan of horror and disgusting stuff, Three Extremes is what you should be watching.
You know, one element about Three Extremes, especially the one which you mentioned, directed by Fruit Chan Dumplings, one element which strikes out is the sound design. The sound design in this in the short film is incredible. You can almost hear the meat around the character's mouth, you know, and even when she's biting into the dumplings, you can hear the little crackles. And in your head, you're already thinking that these are fucking bones of kids. What the fuck is going on? And that fucks with you more than what you're seeing on screen, and that is something, you know, which only master directors can achieve. That actually blew me away, and I've just watched it once, and I don't think I'll watch it again. But yes, I completely get why you recommend this. You guys should definitely check out Three Extremes, which is a which is an amazing watch. And just a quick correction, what Arindam said about The Tale of Two Sisters. It's in fact not a Japanese film, it's a South Korean film, and it's directed by Kim Ji-woon. Yeah, so it's directed by Kim Ji-woon, and it was also remade into a Hollywood version of a movie, has also come out. But you guys definitely should check it out. It's art house. It's definitely a very slow burner. And you know, when we talk about horror, film fans or even filmmakers, if you get in touch with them, they will tell you that horror works in a very small setting, in a very indie environment. Good horror works there. But I think if one director has gone ahead and proved this notion wrong, and it can be just one guy who can do that, right? And that is Steven Spielberg, because one of the greatest horror films ever is Jaws. Because Jaws is, I think, the first bona fide horror film which became a blockbuster. It might seem like a creature feature, but it is a goddamn fucking brilliant horror film. It still freaks me out till this day. It was made in 1975, I think. Yes, 1975. And you know, it's just around a big great white shark who just terrorizes a beach, and aided, of course, by John Williams' famous and unforgettable score. It is a Hitchcockian thriller which is stoutly directed, and it's one of the greatest Spielberg films, and it tackles primal fears. It's an exhilarating adventure. Jaws is, in fact, the real deal, with frightening sequences that haunt and give turns, decades after this film was made. This is such an amazing film.
Jaws is the reason why the term blockbuster was coined, in fact. And I remember there was a very famous letter which he wrote, which George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, I guess, one of them wrote that if Star Wars is a bigger hit, that they would be giving them certain amount of money or something like that. So Jaws, in fact, is like, how you can maximize your efforts out of nothing, because Steven Spielberg, he made it seem that the shark was coming after you, but that was because the shark was so shitty in production that they just couldn't make it work. So that's why you can see it in the point of view of the shark. So that in itself was used by Sam Raimi later, because he couldn't do the same thing, so he used the wind as being the villain, to say, in fact. Also, when we talk about iconic directors, I'd say we're missing out two damn good names from the list. The first is John Landis, and the second is John Carpenter. And for me, in fact, my all-time favorite horror movie is tie between two. It's The Thing. So John Carpenter, he made this thing called The Thing, and it is a work of art. It is what practical effects in its peak of its power. And also there's John Landis's movie American Werewolf in London, which has one of the best transformation sequences that I've ever seen. So these two movies are like, in fact, the best horror movies that I've ever seen. Also, John Landis directed the greatest short movie of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller. So added advantage.
I love John Carpenter. For me, he has made some of the best movies ever. Horror movies aside, I mean, They Live is one of my favorite movies ever. The way he has handled the whole propaganda and brainwashing thing is still, one of the most iconic movies out there for me right now. And then it's got Rowdy Piper, right? So I'm not a big wrestling fan, but I'm sure that is something that you guys totally relate to. I'm not that sold on John Landis himself, but John Carpenter, definitely one of my favorite directors of all times. I think he has it in with the whole studio thing, and he doesn't want to make any big budget movies because he feels they screwed him over with a lot of his movies. So he's gone back to directing really indie movies.
As much as I love The Thing, but for me, the iconic John Carpenter film is Halloween. Just because of the influence that it has had on pop culture, it is just a phenomenal film. I mean, it's a very bare bones plot about a mental patient called Michael Myers who just dons a burnt William Shatner mask, and he just stalks his little sister, Laurie Strode. And it's just a predator-prey kind of a thing. And again, it's a very Hitchcockian suspense. You never really know what's going on, although the acting doesn't hold up to this day. But the sense of suspense, it's almost claustrophobic. It's set in one day, and you really don't know what's going to happen. It has one of the greatest performances by Donald Pleasence. If you guys want to check out a great performance, not just in a horror film, but a great performance overall, a really severely underrated performance, that is by Donald Pleasence. Apart from The Exorcist, it has one of the greatest scores of all time. Fucking John Carpenter, the synths, it's just incredible. You guys, I'll probably after recording this, I'll probably go and watch Halloween, because it definitely is what a fucking fantastic film. I love my horror films to be a little cerebral, which is why one of my favorite horror films of all time came out in 2015. It was called The Witch. It's a supernatural horror film written and directed by Robert Eggers, and it was in fact his directorial debut, and it starred Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickie, Harvey Scrimshaw, Ailey Granger, and Lucas Dawson. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 91%, and on IMDb, it's at 6.8. The Witch is, I think it's a very definition of terror in the purest sense of the word. It is disturbing, it is nerve-wracking, it's a slow burn, and it's profoundly anguishing atmosphere. It just bears down on you as you watch the film. You would just feel like, just watching the film, you feel fucked up, because the atmosphere which is created, the lack of a score for that matter, or the lack of dialogue, and even the dialogue in that quaint English, that really wears down on you. It actually makes your skin crawl at times. And I watched it like at the dead of night. I remember around about 4 o'clock, I was not getting sleep, so I watched The Witch, and right at that time, it just fucked with your head. And I don't think I will ever watch this film again, at least by myself, because I really can't take the sense of atmosphere that this film creates. And this film left a deep impact on me. And it has one of the greatest lines of all time. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Holy shit. I'm trying to get that t-shirt. It's such a brilliant film. I adored this film. What did you guys think about The Witch?
Black Phillip. I love that movie. Just even the dialogues were taken from actual court transcripts from that period of time. So I really enjoyed that movie. I don't think they make horror movies quite like that anymore. And it was one of my favorite. It was my favorite horror movie, in fact, from last year.
No, neither can I, to be honest. I think the one movie that came quite close was Under the Shadows. But I think The Witch has the edge on that. The casting itself is brilliant. I mean, Ralph Ineson, who was there in the British the Office, is really, really brilliant in this movie. And Kate Dickie, who is the mother, she already looks so scary. She's somebody who I won't be able to speak to if I met her on the streets. She's just a Skeletor type figure, man, for me. I mean, that perfect casting, if I may say so. But this movie is so cerebral, like Abhishek was speaking, that it's just one of those movies. I think that's a mark of a good movie, right? You watch it and then you realize that this isn't a movie that you can probably watch alone, and you genuinely are scared by the prospect of watching it again alone by the end of the movie. If it leaves that kind of impression on you, I think that's what's the hallmark of a genuinely good horror movie. And The Witch certainly did that for me. I was watching it alone in a room, and I certainly had a hard time, going off to sleep.
Speaking of atmosphere, I think the last movie which created a similar atmosphere, at least for me, was The Babadook. And the Australians have a way with horror. Babadook was by an Australian director called Jennifer Kent. And it was one scary movie. I know many people didn't like the ending, but fuck that. Like, that ending was the one. If it was anything else, I don't think I would have had that satisfaction. But in fact, she manages to tame a demon. In fact, that's like as fucked up as it gets. And speaking of Australian movies, there's another Australian movie. I know we are talking about, ones which are cerebral, but I also like my horror to have a lot of gore, and it's The Loved Ones. It's basically about a girl.
Oh my God.
She likes a guy. And in fact, the girl, with her father, they kidnap the guy and they just torture that guy throughout the movie. It is one fucked up movie. And I really, saw these movies a lot in college, basically. And one movie which made me stop watching gory movies was the Serbian film, of course. I don't think they get as fucked up as that. I'm sure you guys have watched it, and I think once is more than enough for a movie quite like that.
Definitely once is more than enough for this movie. Here's a really fucked up part. I watched Serbian film not only because somebody asked me to do it, because I'd watched this movie called Black Cat, White Cat. That's a comedy, and one of the actors in that, whom I found really funny, he has a lead role in a Serbian film. I didn't expect this to be as fucked up as it is, and I expected him to be in a comedic role. And when I watched the movie, I was like, fuck this shit. I can't take this movie. You definitely recommend it to other people just for the shock value of it alone. But you know that this is not a movie that people will enjoy.
So I don't think there's any line that the director does not cross. And in fact, there is a director in that movie. I think it was autobiographical in that nature, because they have something known as newborn porn in that movie. So which is one of the sickest thing ever put to film, in my opinion.
And now that you brought it up, I don't want to talk about this fucking film. And moving on from the absolute dregs of horror, which is fucking the Serbian film, which I don't recommend. Don't watch that film, guys. It's fucked up, and it's not a good film. It's exploitative, and that's not what this genre should be. This genre should be glorious. And speaking about the Citizen Kane of horror films, ladies and gentlemen, The Exorcist. How can you not talk of The Exorcist? That is, in fact, the greatest horror film of all time, with the exception of Evil Dead, which is more of a creature feature. But when it comes to cerebral horror, when it comes to horror set deep in the Christian mythos, I think nothing beats The Exorcist. Even if you go to someone who doesn't watch horror films, who doesn't watch Hollywood films, and you talk about this film, they would know what you're talking about because everyone has heard of The Exorcist. And it's one of the scariest films of all time. And while most people don't debate that, what they debate is its watchability. Because I love The Exorcist. I watched it multiple times. I've watched it close to 10, 15 times. But many people who I've spoken with, and as these guys would also attest, that you can't watch this movie a lot of times because it really fucks with your head. Maybe the sight of a young Regan doing the spider walk up and down the stairs, or the character masturbating with a crucifix, or her head tilting for full 360 degrees, or her puking on a priest's habit, or her telling a priest that the priest's mother sucks cocks in hell. Your mother sucks cocks in hell. This movie is just... holy shit, what a brilliant, brilliant film. William H. Friedkin's The Exorcist. Discuss.
The best age, because we are not Americans and we don't comply to that rule, the only age in which you can watch that movie and enjoy it for what it is when you're 10 to 11 years old. Because if you watch it later...
Yeah, that's when we watched it.
That's when we watched it. Because if you watch it today, they'll be like, oh, we've seen things like this, and they'll see endless parodies of it. But if you watch movies like Evil Dead, I think it will make the maximum impact, and it will make you enjoy horror for the genre that it is.
Our culture has it's a harvest festival in January, right? And when we were kids, it was kind of a tradition that we just sit around the heater, because it's very cold where we come from. We sit around the heater and watch tapes, right? They watch films, and always around the house there was talk of Exorcist and it being like really, really scary. So one winter, we actually convinced our uncle, I think, we had a tape of The Exorcist and to play that, and that's when Arindam and I got exposed to The Exorcist, and it scared the living shit out of us, because I don't think we actually completed. Did we complete watching the film?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we actually completed the film, because it just scared the living shit out of us. And that's actually how, like he mentioned as well, that's actually how these films are meant to be watched.
Yep, it is, and it's so. But the problem is only disturbing at a certain age. Like you said, I have a problem with movies like this. I know I have spoken to you guys before on this. It is. I seriously believe there is a religious group out there which is promoting movies like this, because I just can't believe that the kryptonite that any of these the antagonists in all of these movies have, not just the Christian mythos, but specifically just the Catholic part of it, and only the Vatican can do stuff that no other Christian can, and only they can go ahead and say that yes, it's okay to do an exorcism. Why is it that like that? I mean, you come to India, man. Tantric can do it for free. He doesn't need permission from anybody. And here's where I seriously believe that there is a lobby out there. And I know like there are a lot of people who actually go against me on this one, and they say that I don't think there is. But why is it incomprehensible that there is a lobby out there which pushes not just these movies, but they push elements, very Christianic elements, into movies, horror movies, which actually makes it very dumb for me. I know it's now become a staple, but it had to be pushed into these movies. Like for Exorcist, for example, is one of the pioneers of horror movies. So one of the first ones to genuinely scare the living crowd.
The power of Christ compels you.
Only the power of Christ can compel him.
It can't be an episode of Film Geeks podcast in which we do not discuss a conspiracy theory, and I love it for that. Also, I think Vikram Bhatt has showed us with Raz 2 or Raz 3 that there was a ghost in that movie, and they read something out from the Bible and it did not work, and they read from the Hanuman Chalisa and it worked. So I think this entire conspiracy theory is wrong, and our Hindutva is the major force by which ghosts can be exorcised. So just because they do not...
Yeah, because...
reading of the...
Hey, I will... See, there's going to be a holy war eventually, okay? It's going to be the Hollywood lobby, which is trying to promote Christ, and there's going to be the Bollywood lobby, which is trying to promote Hindutva. And eventually they're going to clash. Okay, there's going to be like fucking Chitauri versus the Avengers. All of that shit is going to happen. So no, if you want to know my opinion, I don't actually believe this. I don't think that's true because more than the movies, I think currently, I think people get inspired or people get freaked out more with the music and more with books. I think movies are a very close, very distant third. So if there is a book or if there are bands, for example, fucking Black Sabbath, I don't think they were created by lobbyists. I don't think Dayside was created by lobbyists. I don't think Sataricon, Emperor, any of these extreme metal bands were created by lobbyists. These guys play this music because this music shocks. I don't think Arthur Brown, who wrote the song Fire, I don't think any of these guys were created by lobbyists who are trying to promote something. These guys are inspired by literature. I don't think H.P. Lovecraft was created in a lab. I really don't think Clive Barker, for that matter, was not created in a lab. He genuinely likes horror.
You're actually arguing against the point in a very different direction. What I'm saying is that the fact that these tropes are being used in these movies in a specific way, and it's the same throughout the movies, whether it was in the 70s, whether it is now, there has been no change in any of the tropes that are being used. When they start using Hanuman Chalisa in Hollywood movies, not Vikram Bhatt movies, in Hollywood movies, then we can speak about whether it's a thing or not. But right now I'm saying is that because it's only using one religion, not just one religion, a subset of a religion which is very specifically Catholicism, then my spidey senses are being triggered. There are no other movies out there in this genre that rely on any other religion.
Is the majority religion?
Everyone.
Is it? But it's not. Catholicism is not the major Christian religion in the world. Catholicism, especially the Roman Catholics, which the Vatican philosophy
but they're the most anal about all of this shit, dude. They're the most anal about fucking sins. They get most triggered. They're the most triggered among all the Christians. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but trust me, I studied in a Catholic school and I know how it works. These guys are the most triggered, for the lack of a better word, more than Protestants, more than anyone else. These guys.
Exactly why it makes sense that they will be out there pushing their own agenda in their movies.
I don't think this is true, because especially The Exorcist. Exorcist is based on a novel, dude.
So who wrote it?
I basically think because what happens is that maybe most of them were from a Catholic background growing up, and they did not like what was going on, and they wrote against stuff like this. They did not, primarily.
Exactly.
If it is a parody, right? The novel was written with the intent of it being commentary, social commentary, and it is a parody on say the current scenario, religious scenario, then I think it's not you can't truly treat it as a horror, but actually a satirical
I
horror.
think they write that because they are most used to that, because they see it all around them. They see the Bible Belt is there, of course. So they see things like that creeping into them and forcing their censorship, and they lash out against it by writing stuff like this. But again, they write, only Christian things and stop it, because that is what they're used to. That's their pop culture.
It's seeping into popular culture and popular belief right now. Because if you look at even Hindi movies to some extent, the first instinct of a Indian horror movie will be to pick up a cross. I don't know if you remember the Z horror shows and this.
Right. That's pop culture again, because we've seen those happen from the Dracula movies.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'll tell you why. Because we Hindus, we cremate our dead. Okay,
yes.
Our dead are turned into ashes, but the Christian dead are into graves. So from a filmmaking perspective, from a storytelling perspective, it's much cooler for someone to come out of a grave with a hand coming out, and what do you have in graveyards? You have a church, hence the crosses. So that makes more sense. And Muslims don't, the Islamic people, they don't have such a distinctive symbol, for that matter. I'm not trying to be offensive, it is what it is. They don't have such a distinctive symbol. You pick up a cross and it's more indicative that you have the power of God with you.
I think,
because it makes for a more cool visual, right?
I know, in Indian sense, yes, it does. But it's being influenced by, the way it is, I'm saying is that because it was used so extensively in the Hollywood movies, so it has become a very easy for us Indians, because we are copycats at the end of the day, right? It's become very easy for us to incorporate all of those elements in our movies. Whether or not it makes sense, who gives a damn?
This genre, horror, in fact, has so much of content, so many subgenres, so many directors, so many types of film that we can't really cover it in one podcast. So maybe later on down the months, we'll do a part 2 of this horror podcast. And the last film which I would want to talk about, I personally would want to talk about, I'm sure you guys are also big fans, and considering we're doing this in honor of the 30th anniversary of the Evil Dead 2, in fact, let's just talk about Cabin in the Woods before we move on to off the track. Cabin in the Woods, in fact, was directed by Drew Goddard in his directorial debut, and it's written by Joss Whedon and Goddard himself. And the film stars Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, Anna Hutchinson, Frank Kranz, Jesse Williams, Richard Jenkins, and Bradley Whitford. Currently, it's on Rotten Tomatoes at 92%, and on IMDb, it's 7 out of 10. And Arindam, please explain to all the listeners out there why we are speaking about Cabin in the Woods.
It changed the game entirely when it comes to horror movies. When we think about horror movies, first thing is there's obviously the cabin in the wood, and there are these particular characters. There's the virgin, there's the jock, there's the funny guy, there's the black guy. There's these are the normal horror tropes which are there in every movie, and this movie breaks down every aspect of horror in such a way that whenever you see a horror movies, you will think of Cabin in the Woods instantly. You'll think of what they have done to make these things attack them or make them be haunted, because it has been written in such a brilliant way that you can't write yourself around Cabin in the Woods. Now, like a filter has been placed. Like there's pre-Cabin in the Woods and there's post-Cabin in the Woods. So whenever a horror movie comes out now, you just think about, okay, what have these shitheads done to, make these things happen to them? And it's a love letter to horror movies. If you're a fan of horror movies, you watch that and you can just, every time you watch, you notice something. Oh, there's that reference that I missed out earlier. So I don't think it gets better than that. It's one of my favorite movies that came out. The first bit of information that I read on a website was that watch this movie, do not see the trailer, do not read the synopsis, do not read who is there in this movie. Just watch it. And it's one of my favorite horror movies ever made.
I think I'll also, sort of mirror that sentiment. It is one of the best horror movies ever made out there, and not just for the main reasons that you mentioned. It is because it's a fantastic movie, period. It's just, Joss Whedon, I don't think he can do any wrong. He has always gotten it spot on. I don't know how he does it. He always gets to make the best of things, whether it's a TV series or whether it's a movie. I think he has it perfectly down when it comes to the DNA of making a good movie. And in this movie, I think he captures it perfectly. The name itself is so unassuming, and I was not expecting anything out of this movie. I hadn't seen the trailers, I hadn't read any synopsis, and I watched it way after it was released. Because you have no expectations, it just exceeds them to such a limit that you are forced to recommend this to everybody, that this is one of the best horror movies out there. It's such a beautiful homage to all the movies out there that are there. That one scene where these guys are going down the lift at the end of the movie, and they show the different creatures and all the different apparitions that are out there. And that is such a brilliant scene in itself, and showed you that the movie could have taken any direction and it still would have worked. And it was so brilliantly done that it's something that I wouldn't mind watching any day. In fact, maybe I think I'll go home and watch it today.
It's a spectacular film. It could be, it could easily have, like you said, could have easily been weighed down by attempting to make a scathing commentary on horror. And like Arindam said, it's a love letter. I would think this movie was made from someone who is so sick and tired of horror movies that he just wants to poke holes in it and says, like, see, you can make fun of this genre, you can be an asshole about it and still make a very good horror film. And I think that's what Drew Goddard actually tries to do. But it doesn't feel like it, because it actually comes across as someone who loves this genre. It doesn't spend time telling its audience what's good and what's bad about the horror genre like we discussed, but it simply offers up ideas for conversation. The one character takes part A instead of part B, and what would happen if he just thinks out of the box. to horrific results, as we find out with what happens to Chris Hemsworth character. So I highly recommend that you guys check out Cabin in the Woods. It's by Drew Goddard and written by, one of the greatest people in the MCU, or who was the greatest person in the MCU, Joss Whedon. You guys should definitely check that out. And that brings us to the close of the horror podcast discussion. We should in fact do this again.
Definitely. I haven't even touched half my list till now. And we're probably over.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about, just check out the movies that we can talk about, man. We can talk about American Psycho. We haven't spoken about Devil's Backbone. We haven't spoken about The Host. We haven't touched anything by Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah, we'll just save the European and the more of the Asian stuff for the second part, I'd say.
And we haven't even got into the slasher films.
Yeah,
we haven't spoken about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I can't believe I haven't spoken Carrie, one of my top 5 horror films of all time.
We should definitely get back to this later in the year.
We should definitely do it again.
Probably we touched upon 5 movies from my list. It was a longer list than I expected, but then chalta hai. We'll probably have to revisit this thing. I'm sure we'll have to probably bring in another person and probably even pitch into some of the things we might be missing.
Yes, and that being said, let's get on very quickly with Off the Track. So guys, tell me, what have you guys been reading or watching?
I've been on a Wolverine binge ever since Old Man Logan. So I have been reading Enemy of the State. It's by the same guy who wrote Old Man Logan. And it's basically about Wolverine being brainwashed and he's out to kill the entire Marvel universe.
I'm currently watching Judd Apatow's Love Season 2. The first season itself was, I think, brilliant. It was a brilliant show on how relationships actually are and not how they're supposed to be, like they show in really do good movies. I think Judd Apatow's record in TV series is perfect. Mostly because he doesn't do follow-up season to most of his iconic TV series that he has made so far. Freaks and Geeks being one example. And I think this is the first time that, as far as I can remember, that he has made a second season for any of the TV series that he has been involved in. Can you guys think of any other? Love was brilliant in that aspect. I think it was very down to earth. At the same time, it was very neurotic, and it's builds up very slowly, but at the same time, the characters are so lame that you kind of associate yourself with them, even if you don't want to. And Gillian Jacobs is brilliant in her role, and it's something that the first season is probably something that you should catch. The second season is in continuation, and I've only caught 2 episodes so far, and it seems to be as brilliant as the first one.
Right, I haven't done a lot of reading this week because work has been like really a bitch. But apart from that, I've been watching a lot of Indian stand-up comedy. I think you guys know where to find that. And I highly recommend that you check out some of Biswa's stuff. Check out the AIB's latest season of Anir with the AIBs also. You can check that out on Hotstar. We don't need to put in the links. You guys know how to get that. And apart from the Indian stand-up comedy scene, and just before I forget, a lot of Netflix shows are also coming out, and I think Arindam is also going to one of the tapings. I think Biswa's
Amazon taping on the 31st. So I'll let you guys know in the next podcast.
Yeah. So a lot of Indian content is coming out on Netflix as well, Indian stand-up content. So you guys should keep your eyes peeled for that. And also, I've been watching the show called Vice Principals, which is an American comedy series starring Danny McBride, Walter Goggins, Georgia King, Busey Phillips, Kimberly Hurt Gregory, and Shea Wingham. The co-creators are Danny McBride and Jodie Hill, and the series is on HBO, and you guys can check that out on Hotstar as well. So that brings us to the end of this edition, a very special tribute to the Evil Dead and the horror films that we love. So you can find us on YouTube, as always, at youtube.com/IndianNerve. On Facebook at facebook.com/IndianNerve, on Twitter at twitter.com/IndianNerve, on Instagram at instagram.com/IndianNerve, or you guys can visit us at www.indiannerve.com. I'd like to thank all you listeners for all your support, and please do like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. Please let us know if you would want to talk to us about any of your favorite shows or films that you think that we would like. So from all of us here, wherever you're listening, we hope that you're having a great day, and may the force be with you always. Bye-bye.